My husband Ryan and I met in a random community emergency response training class and clicked right away. At first, his family seemed normal. His dad Michael was quiet but polite. His sister Tara was actually really cool. But Deborah, oh boy. The first warning sign came at our engagement dinner. When Ryan went to the bathroom, Deborah leaned across the table, still smiling, and whispered that she'd waited too long for Ryan to find someone worthy, and that she wouldn't let just anyone into their family. I laughed it off, thinking she was joking, but her eyes were stone cold. After we married, things escalated quickly. She began turning up at our apartment unannounced at 7 o'clock in the morning on weekends, with food, but really, to check whether we were home. She called Ryan constantly with staged emergencies. Once, she phoned, crying that she thought she was having a heart attack. When we rushed over, she was sitting and watching TV and said, "Oh, the pain passed. Stay for dinner." I tried to explain to Ryan how wrong this was, but he'd lived with her manipulation his whole life and accepted it as normal. He kept saying, "That's just mom being protective." I kept insisting, "No, this is not normal." Things blew up when I got pregnant. We were excited, but planned to keep it private for a while. Somehow, Deborah knew before we told anyone. She turned up with a baby outfit and said, "For my grandbaby." I was only 6 weeks along and hadn't told a soul. When I asked how she found out, she smiled and said, "A mother always knows." 2 days later, I checked our shared calendar on Ryan's iPad and found strange appointment reminders, regular check-in calls. I clicked one and nearly fainted. They were scheduled calls where Ryan was supposed to update his mom on everything about me and the pregnancy. She'd been making him spy on me and report back. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. They're waiting at our house. We need to discuss Ryan's future and how we'll handle this as a family." When Ryan asked what she meant, she said, "You think this is the first time I've had to save you from a mistake? Ask your father what happened to Jessica." Ryan went white. Apparently, Jessica was his high school girlfriend, who abruptly moved away. He stammered, "What did you do to Jessica?" Deborah laughed. "Nothing she didn't deserve. Now come home, son, without her." Ryan grabbed my hand and we left. In the car, he was shaking so badly he couldn't drive. He told me his dad had always hinted that his mom had taken care of Jessica, but he never understood until now. Jessica had gotten pregnant at 17 and then suddenly moved away after telling only Ryan's mom. We checked into a hotel and Ryan called Tara. She immediately started crying and confirmed our worst fears. Deborah had terrorized every woman Ryan had dated, using threats and blackmail until the families made the girls disappear. Tara said Deborah had kept a file on me before we were even engaged. That night, someone tried our hotel door at 3 o'clock a.m. Ryan looked through the peephole and nearly fell back. It was his dad, Michael, just standing there silently. So, if you read my last post, you know Deborah basically carpet-bombed our life and refused to accept my marriage to her son. I wish I could say things calmed after we left our apartment and went into hiding, but no, that was only the beginning. If you want a neat, happy ending, this isn't that story. If you want to know what it's like to be hunted by your husband's family because you married their precious boy, keep reading. We left off at the hotel, trembling in a chain room, trying to process that Michael had stood outside our door at 3 o'clock in the morning, not knocking, just standing. I don't know if he meant to scare us or expected us to open the door and hand ourselves over, but it was terrifying either way. Ryan paced, pale and wired. I texted my aunt at 3:20 a.m., trying to decide whether to call the police. We did the classic panicked couple move, wedged a chair and my suitcase against the door, checked the peephole every 5 minutes, and whispered down to the front desk. The night manager said he'd check security footage and send someone up. By the time anyone bothered to show, Michael was gone. Thanks, hotel security. I hardly slept and kept dreaming Michael lurking in the hall with a butcher knife, or inexplicably, a giant fish. Not sure why. At 6:30, the manager called to say Michael had left something at the desk. Ryan didn't want to go get it, but I needed to know. I sent him down while I stood by the door with my phone, ready to call 911. Ryan returned, holding a plain manila envelope. Inside were 4 childhood photos of him. School pics, a birthday snapshot, and a folded note in Deborah's handwriting, sharp, underlined, angry cursive. The note read, "Family is forever. We can forgive you if you come home and talk to us without her." She'd drawn a little heart and signed it, Mom. I laughed, the kind of laugh that's almost a cry. Emotional blackmail via yearbook photos. Ryan sat on the bed, staring at the pictures, lost between pleasing his parents and burning everything down. That's when the calls started. The hotel phone rang. It was Deborah, in a high, fake, sweet voice saying she was downstairs and needed to speak with her son privately, and that I needed to come down and face the consequences. I said no and hung up. She kept calling the hotel, our phones, even Ryan's rarely used WhatsApp. Her messages escalated, threatening to tell people I was unstable, manipulative, and unfit to be a mother. She threatened to contact my aunt, friends, old neighbors, all because I married her son and wouldn't let her control me. Ryan finally texted Tara, "We need help. Mom is here." Tara, who seems to be the only sane one in that family, came straight over with her boyfriend Devin. 6 feet of try me. I'd never been so relieved to see anyone. Tara brought coffee and snacks and started tearing into her mom in the hallway. The police did arrive, 5 squad cars, and officers separated everyone, took statements, and ordered Deborah and Michael off the property. Tara's boyfriend sent me the video. After the adrenaline crash, I felt awful and depleted. I wanted to go home or call my mom, but she's been gone for years. Ryan offered comfort, but I just sat with my head down. Tara sat with me and quietly confirmed Deborah had always been controlling, only now worse. She'd never seen her go this far, even with what had happened to Jessica. We checked out of the hotel before noon. The manager apologized but seemed relieved to see us go. Devin volunteered to drive us. We debated options in his old SUV. Returning to our apartment was unsafe. Another hotel risked being found. Tara's place was small, and Michael had a spare key. The best choice was my dad's house, a retired man with a big home and a solid security system who had never liked Deborah. The 40-minute drive was quiet. Tara and Devin talked about changing their locks. Ryan held the envelope of childhood photos like it was a burden, while group chats filled with rumors. Neighbors and acquaintances were asking if we were splitting up or if I'd made threats. I ignored them, desperate to get somewhere secure. Arriving at my dad's was a relief. He stood on the porch like a protective parent, ushered us in, handed me tea, and said, "You're safe here." We slept a little, until my dad's phone started ringing. Deborah had found his number and was calling, demanding he return her son. Dad blocked her. Ryan still wouldn't block his parents. That night, the 4 of us, me, Ryan, Tara, and Devin, ate takeout and cataloged everything Deborah had done, like compiling evidence for a true crime episode. Tara admitted fear that Deborah might target her next. Devin said he'd call police if Michael showed up. Ryan repeatedly apologized until I told him to stop. This was not solely his fault. For now, we had to stay at my dad's. A couple days later, the wider family got dragged in. My cousin Barbara called, relaying Deborah's version that we were refusing to let Ryan see his family. Barbara suggested compromise. I was incredulous. Tara had received calls saying I'd brainwashed Ryan and was withholding the baby. Some relatives, like Aunt Marilyn, responded to Deborah's narrative and urged family unity. Deborah's outreach started to convince certain people. Ryan oscillated between wanting to placate his mother and wanting to protect our family. Devin and Tara tried to lighten the mood, but it was tense. My dad promised to call police if Deborah appeared at his house. The escalation was predictable. I found a letter taped to the mailbox, addressed to me. Inside was a chaotic mix of typed and handwritten claims. Deborah threatened legal action for defamation and alleged I was slandering the family. It read like a DIY cease and desist. 2 hours later, DMs began circulating, old acquaintances and local groups posting that I'd been hospitalized or was unstable. Someone started a thread in a neighborhood moms group using my wedding photo to question my mental state. I regretted reading the comments, but couldn't help it. Ryan called his dad. Michael minimized everything, saying women get emotional. Devin considered confronting him, but Tara convinced him not to. Around 3 p.m., the Ring doorbell announced visitors. My dad checked and found Deborah and Michael on the lawn, arms crossed. My dad pulled on his shoes and walked outside with Tara and me behind him. Deborah claimed she'd come to collect her son and check on the baby. Michael scanned the property. Dad told them to leave and threatened to call police. Deborah escalated, invoking lawyers and parental rights, and tried to force past him. I stepped between her and the door. She shoved me hard enough that I stumbled. Tara steadied me. Michael confronted Ryan about throwing his life away while neighbors watched. Devin intervened and a scuffle unfolded. Deborah tried to slap Tara. My dad grabbed Deborah's wrist. She yanked away, accusing us of abuse. Neighbors called the police. Officers arrived, took separate statements, and ordered Deborah and Michael off the property for trespassing. My dad warned her that if she returned, he'd seek a restraining order. After they left, the house fell quiet. Ryan began to cry quietly. Tara hugged him. My dad said plainly, "Sometimes you have to pick your real family." Tara then showed me a text where Deborah threatened to cut her out of the will. Tara said she was done with trying to keep the peace. We lay low for the next few days. My dad changed the Wi-Fi password because Michael had once tried to access a baby monitor. Phones were on silent. I barely slept. Ryan barely ate. Tara alternated between rage texting and trying to support us. The immediate danger had passed, but Deborah kept making calls and spreading rumors. We considered going public with evidence or posting the hotel video to shut down the lies, but the thought of more exposure was exhausting. For now, staying with my dad felt like the only safe option. That's the situation so far. The family is fractured, Deborah is still active, and we're figuring out boundaries and legal options. I don't know the full plan yet, whether we'll pursue restraining orders or go public, but we're documenting everything and leaning on Tara and Devin for support. If you've read this far, thank you. I'm not sure if I want advice or just to get this out, but it helps to share. I'll post updates if things change. Her mom was stress baking cookies, and every time the doorbell rang, we all jumped. Then the next wave hit. Deborah began reaching out to extended family, claiming I was unstable, that Ryan was being mistreated and that my dad was hiding us. My cousin Barbara even came by with cookies, trying to stage a mini intervention. She gave a long speech about healing the rift. My dad told her to check her facts before making accusations. Barbara left, but not before giving me a look like I'd personally ruined Christmas. It didn't stop there. One evening, I got an email, supposedly from a lawyer, warning me to stop slandering their family name or face legal action. The email was riddled with typos and lacked a proper signature, so I assumed Deborah either wrote it herself or had someone draft it for her. I showed it to my dad, who laughed and said, "Let's see her try." Meanwhile, Ryan's phone started blowing up with texts from acquaintances he barely talks to, asking what was going on. Turns out, Deborah was telling people in town that Ryan was missing and I was holding him against his will. Devin offered to go stay at the inn, but by that point, I was just exhausted. Not defeated or ready to give up, just tired in that way where you're constantly bracing for the next hit. I started researching restraining orders while my dad contacted a lawyer friend for advice. Ryan and I even argued about whether we should move out of state. He wanted to, but I didn't want to run because of Deborah. Then things got worse. Deborah and Michael showed up at my dad's house after dark. This time, my dad didn't even answer the door. He just called the police after spotting them on the camera. Deborah stood outside, yelling into her phone, insisting she was being denied her rights as a grandmother, and that the law would back her. Police arrived and warned her that if she returned, she'd be arrested. Michael just glared before leaving. After that, my dad added more cameras, a new lock, and even one of those alarms that go off if someone touches the door handle. I started keeping my phone fully charged and nearby at all times. Ryan finally agreed to block his mom, and Tara did the same. It felt like drawing a line in the sand, but also knowing waves would keep washing over it. The fallout spread beyond family drama. Deborah contacted my old landlord, trying to get me blacklisted from renting locally. She messaged friends of mine, saying I was unstable. Some people ghosted me, while others called to check in, but I could hear the doubt in their voices. It was humiliating. One day, I walked in to find my dad staring at his phone. He handed it to me. Deborah had made a Facebook post tagging half the family, saying she was praying for Ryan's safe return and asking for community support. The comments were divided. Prayers, questions, and thinly veiled digs at me. It looked like a war zone. That night, Ryan and I sat on the back steps watching the neighbor's cat chase moths. He asked if I still wanted to have the baby, if I was worried it would only make things worse. I told him the truth. I didn't know what I wanted, except for Deborah to leave us alone. He nodded, and we just sat in silence. The next morning, we decided hiding wasn't enough. We needed to take action. We started preparing paperwork for a restraining order. My dad offered to help. Tara said she'd testify if needed, and Devin began compiling every screenshot, video, and message. For the first time, it felt like we were moving from defense to offense. Not going to lie, I was nervous. This wasn't a soap opera, but here we were. And if you've read this far, you know Deborah doesn't back down. Filing paperwork was only the beginning. Here's the latest update. When things went public, they got even messier. The last post ended with us preparing for the restraining order after Deborah stormed my dad's house, blew up the family group chat, and trashed my reputation in town. If you thought it peaked there, think again. The week we started paperwork, it felt like we were living in a bunker. Dad was glued to the security cameras. Tara was sleeping on our couch. Ryan kept leaving half-finished coffee cups everywhere, which drove my dad crazy. But no one had the energy to argue over chores. I kept waiting for Deborah to show up again, but it actually went quiet for a while, which somehow felt worse, like she was planning something. Finally, we got a court date. The process was slow and full of red tape. Dad helped with the forms, Tara pulled screenshots, Devin compiled videos, and Ryan spent hours on the phone with anyone who would listen. I even caught him scrolling through old photos of his mom, but he didn't say anything. Meanwhile, Deborah went all in online. She made vague Facebook posts about losing her son to a manipulative outsider, tagged us in them, and even sent private messages to people asking them to pray for her grandchild's safety. Neighbors started looking at us differently. People I barely knew sent me DMs asking if rumors were true. Even at church, my dad's group started dropping concerned comments. Ryan was also getting messages from Michael, alternating between guilt trips, emotional pleas, and reminders about family traditions. If you've read the earlier posts, you know why hearing Jessica's name still unsettles Ryan. Michael never apologized, never supported us, just kept piling on. All of it wore us down. We fought over petty things, food, chargers, even whether to answer the landline. My dad reminded me to eat. Tara stress cleaned. Devin started spending more time at his own place, and even the cat hid when voices got raised. Then, the day before court, Deborah showed up again, this time with Michael, waving self-written grandparents' rights papers she'd printed online. She smugly handed them to me and said she'd fight for her grandchild no matter what. I shut the door in her face. Court day was surreal. We were up before dawn. Tara did my hair with shaking hands. My dad wore the only suit he owned. We packed all our evidence, printouts, phones, USB drives, into a grocery bag. At the courthouse, Deborah and Michael were already waiting. She was dressed like she was attending Sunday service. The waiting room was tense. Deborah kept glancing at us, Michael glaring at Ryan. When our case was called, Deborah launched into a dramatic speech about losing her son, even producing tissues as she cried. Our lawyer, a family friend, calmly laid out the facts. The hotel incident, trespassing, fake profiles, threats. Deborah kept interrupting, insisting I was cutting Ryan off and poisoning the next generation. At one point, she tried handing the judge a stack of emails, but was told to sit down. Then she shouted about Jessica, unsettling Ryan further. The judge warned her to stop or be removed. When it was my turn, I explained Deborah's ongoing harassment, the unannounced visits, the constant calls, attempts to ruin my reputation, even physically grabbing me at the hotel. I read some of her worst texts aloud and said plainly, "I just want her to leave us alone." Ryan finally spoke, saying Deborah had always tried to control him, but this was different. It was destroying our marriage. Tara added her own statement, admitting she loved her mom, but couldn't keep defending her behavior. The judge granted the restraining order. Deborah couldn't approach us, contact us, or show up at my dad's home. She tried to argue, then yelled she'd make us regret it before being escorted out. After court, we stood outside in silence, trying to process. My dad actually smiled for the first time in weeks. Ryan seemed deflated, like whatever hope he had left for reconciliation was gone. I didn't feel relief exactly, but for the first time, I felt a bit safe. Of course, Deborah didn't stop. She claimed she'd been unfairly accused, made new Facebook posts, and even started a GoFundMe for her legal expenses. Some people supported her. Others reached out with sympathy. My cousin Barbara cut contact, and Aunt Marilyn called to say we'd overreacted. Ryan wanted to move out of state. I didn't want to give Deborah that power. Tara decided to stay close, worried Deborah would try to get around the order. Devin suggested weekly check-ins so we could all stay updated. Life kept moving. The baby was still on the way. Dad bought a new video monitor. We started searching for a new apartment. Ryan and Tara blocked their mom. Devin helped Tara change her locks. And I kept my phone close, heart racing every time it buzzed. So that's where we're at now. Thanks for sticking through it. And if you ever see someone's mother-in-law lurking in a hotel lobby at 3 a.m., maybe take it as a warning sign.